Yeah, totally. What's going on, guys? The NHL betting market for January the
Did it again.
21st,
We got
2021. Fat guy, we're going to start off with the Flyers Bruins 718 bets, 7 p.m. Eastern time start. Bruins open minus 128. They've been bet up quite a bit here to minus 148. 48% of bettors and 70% of the money is on the Bruins. And as always, we like to take a look at the puck line to see how it correlates or does not correlate.
yeah.
The Bruins opened as 1.5 point favorites at home at plus 183. That's been bet down to plus 172. 33% of bettors, 81% of the money is on the Bruins. So the book is taking exposure on the Bruins on the money line. They're taking exposure on the Bruins on the puck line, and how they've moved these lines signifies to us that they're kind of worried about the Bruins winning by 2 or more goals.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, the Flyers winning by one, depending on the handle, because we got to remember we don't know the amount of money bet on the money line or the puck line, so we can't make like a risk assessment. Because believe me, if we could get those numbers, we would have a calculator telling you right exactly where there is risk and where there isn't, and we know where we'd be putting our money on. The sharpest book in the world, risk assessment, or what two guys from Canada think they know about hockey. I think we know what we would do there. However, we don't have those handle numbers, so we only make assumptions. We could guess that we could forecast that perhaps there's more money on the puck line, but they are taking exposure on the Bruins regardless. It's not as bad on the money line just because of multiplying factors, and that's why it's not balanced. But 81% at 172 at a
That's
lower
huge.
handle is massive, whereas 70% at 148 is like, even if it's like twice the money. Do you know what I mean? So it's interesting. It's very interesting. So is there value on the Flyers? I don't know. Like, I wouldn't want to pay that 193 price. I'd rather take the 134. But they're starting to incentivize it, to be perfectly honest.
And then the OU for this game opened at 5.5 with juice on the under at minus 116. The juice has actually moved in favor of the under to minus 123, still at 5.5 goals. 75% of bettors have bet the under, but 67% of the money is on the over. 5.5 at plus 110 seems pretty juicy, and you can understand why 67% of the money is on the over.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's these things are so weird though. Like minus 123 and plus 110 on a total, don't you think? Like it's just bizarre to me. And in theory, it's much better, I would think, for the game to go under. I mean, you're only going to pay out at minus 123, and you only have to pay out a third of the money roughly.
Yeah, and,
So
and they've done a lot to incentivize people to bet the over. So you can tell that they're trying to get people bet percentage-wise and money percentage-wise to jump on that over, really incentivizing people to take it. So it makes you think, like, what do they know about this under, or what's the news that they have that we don't have that's pushing this towards a 5 goals or less game.
So if it's a 5 goals or less game, the most likely total is five, and they're taking exposure on the Bruins. So perhaps there's value on the Flyers. So a 3-2 victory by the Flyers. I mean, that would probably be the best result for the book. And at certain other books, it's 8.5 to 1.
Interesting to note. Appreciate that little extra tidbit, fat guy.
Yeah.
On to the next game. We have the Jets. The Jets Senators, 794 bets, 7 p.m. Eastern time start. The Sens opened at plus 112 at home. The line has moved in their favor to plus 108. 58% of bettors and 60% of the money is on the Senators. So taking a little bit of exposure on the Senators money line, let's take a look at the puck line where it tells us the exact same story. Plus 1.5 for the Senators as a home team at minus 207 has been pushed up to minus 216 currently. 33% of bettors, however, 93% of the money is on the Sens. So they are taking a slight exposure on the Senators, both on the money line and on the puck line. And the lines have moved in favor of the Senators on both the money line and the puck line, ever so slightly.
Yeah, that is interesting. I mean, like 93% on the puck line is, I mean, it is devastating. 93% of the money. However, though, it's like it's not as bad when you're only paying out at minus 216, right? And you could even like who knows what, like I said, what the handles are, because that could even be it could even be worse at 60% of a larger handle, paying out at plus 108 at plus money. Do you know what I mean? Do you see what I mean? Like where the balancing scale could be different.
Yeah.
Either way, positive Senator news is bad for the books. It looks like so far, Big Ray.
Yeah. And then the OU for this game, it opened at 6. The over was favored at minus 119. It's been bet down to essentially even side on both juice at minus 106. Still the total goals at 6. 65% of bettors on the over. 91% of the money, though, has been placed on the under, helping push that juice down from, minus 119 down to minus 106.
106. It's got to be more of a move because I mean, let's see how much buyback is actually on the OU here. It's a weird one to take 91%, 93% of exposure on one side. At least the Senators, like, I mean, the Senators on the puck line is minus 216, whereas like on the under it's minus 106. So that's just like. That's way worse. Even if the numbers are even close, even like within a few percentage points, it's way worse to have this, being weighed on like so much money on the under. But I mean, that's something interesting to look out for. So far the books are taking exposure on the under and the Senators. So obviously the best result would be the Jets in the over.
Yeah, especially if the Jets win by 2, that's going to be their best payout. Yeah. So like a 4-2 would be a push. So like a 5-2 victory for the Jets would be the best result for the books.
And it would be 18-1 on certain books.
Next up, we have the Devils Islanders, 7 p.m. Eastern time start. 643 bets in this game. The line has moved in favor of the Islanders from minus 146 to minus 156. 60% of bettors and 64% of the money is on the New York Islanders. So not a lot to report there. That's all makes sense on the money line. Let's take a look at the puck line. It might tell a different story. The line has moved in favor of the Islanders again as minus 1.5 goal favorites. They've gone from plus 166 just slightly down to plus 161. 60% of bettors. However, 84% of the money is on the Islanders puck line. So they are actually taking quite a bit of exposure here on the Islanders to win by 2 or more.
Like, yeah, because the money line is pretty close, right? Considering the plus 140, minus 146. I mean, again, I don't have it right in front of me, but it's pretty close. Whereas the puck line is anything but that, because it's 84% of the money at plus 161. I know I keep highlighting it, but that's just a catastrophic result if the Islanders win by 2. Of course, the handle could nullify that, the handle on the puck line. Like, there just isn't a ton of, like, it's 84% of a lot lower total handle. I mean, that's always a possibility. I would imagine it's actually more likely, right? Because you're going to take exposure if it's less money, right? Like I'd mentioned earlier in the previous video, the Bucks Lakers, you're never going to have that. You're never going to see that just because the handle is going to be so large. Like, someone's getting fired over that. Whereas this one, like, they might just take a calculated risk considering the money. But again, this is an early line. This game isn't starting for what do we got? 4 or 5 hours, Big Rye, roughly 4 and change.
4 hours and 19 minutes.
There you go. Yeah, it's there's a clock. I didn't know they had a clock on the bottom right of your computer. And take us to the OU. Wow, it's 5.
Yeah, the OU's 5. I off my memory, I think this is the first OU we've seen at 5 this year. And it does make sense that there is heavy juice on the over. It opened at minus 137. It's been bet down slightly to minus 133. 33% of bettors, however, 94% of the money is on the over.
Well, something interesting here. So it's very interesting. So the under, obviously they have a lot of exposure if the over happens. And I kind of like forecasting exact scores. I feel like it's what we've been doing. We've just been comparing it to lines, even though, by the way, that's a derivative market with giant juice. But it's possible it is beatable even then. But regardless, I kind of like the exact score forecast when the OU is lower because I feel like the combination percentage wise gets cut down significantly.
That makes sense.
So it really does, right? So, I mean, a push on the OU wouldn't be unreasonable, right? Or perhaps going under at 3-1, right? So, or maybe, sorry, like 2-1 for the Devils. That would pay 11-1, for instance. Again, this is all just a forecast. And or perhaps even 2-1 for the Islanders, which would pay 8-1. All interesting stuff because it's like they could set this OU at 6. Why are they doing it at 5? You have to ask yourself that. You know, it just even if you go by goal average, it's still hockey. Like they're professional hockey teams. Scoring is the impetus. It's what the league wants, right? They don't want 1-0 games. They really don't. They want action. They want scoring. They want Canucks Habs last night, 6-5 in the shootout. Takes a long time. Good revenue. People stay interested. Squares love scoring, right? So they don't want that, and that's why, like, when you see a line like 5, it's just that's I don't know. Big Ry, isn't that not just that's like seeing a football score at 34?
Yeah. Well, just to give some perspective, 25.9% of games have finished with 4 goals or less this year. So it's been 6. I think 7's been the most common amount for goals this year. So seeing something open at 5, like we were speculating, when are we going to start seeing some of these OUs open at 7? So when you see a game like 5, there is a ton of juice on the over, and 94% of the money is on the over. So it is something to note, but it's always interesting. You and I don't know enough about the Devils and Islanders to know for sure, but I'd have to guess these are two fairly defensive teams that don't take. But we got to go
look at this though. Either this is just juice adjustment from 137 to 133, or it's a reverse line movement. I don't know. Something's weird. Maybe this is going to end up a 1-0 game. Like, who knows? Very interesting stuff. Very interesting.
On to the next game, a 7 p.m. Eastern time start, 529 bets. The Tampa Bay Lightning taking on the Columbus Blue Jackets. The Lightning open as -154 favorites. The money line has moved slightly towards the Lightning, or in favor of the Lightning, to -157. 75% of bettors and 48% of the money is on the Lightning. So the book's taking a little bit of what looks like sharp exposure here on the Blue Jackets, despite them moving the line very, very, very slightly towards the Tampa Bay Lightning.
It's like that move doesn't signify too much because it's 48% of the money on the Lightning, but at -157, right? You got to remember, I've been bringing this up a million times, but it just needs to be hammered home every time, essentially, right? 52% at plus money. That's bad for the book in theory.
And then the puck line, it doesn't tell us too much because the Blue Jackets open at +1.5, -172. It's been bet up to -181. 56% of bettors are on the puck line. Unfortunately, we don't have the money percentages, so we really don't know the full picture.
And it would be disingenuous to speculate on what the money percentage would be in relation to the volume because we could be so off, right?
Yeah. So let's move on to the OU. The OU for this game, it opened at 5.5 at -123. There has been a huge shift in the juice to the under 5.5, -118. It's one of the biggest shifts I've seen this year, Fat Guy.
And the under 5.5.
Yeah, and 28% of bets on the under. 88% of the money, though, has been placed on the under. So the books were definitely worried about all the money that came in on the under. If you got +5.5 at +107, that's unreal. And also, we don't get to talk about it a lot with these markets, but this is a middling opportunity because you could have got 5.5 at +107 on the under, and you could get right now over 5.5 at +105, which would be a guaranteed win no matter what the result is.
Well, think about it this way. Think about you bet $1,000. You're going to either win or you could prorate it. So you bet 990 or whatever on the under, or I don't have the math exactly in front of me. You can guarantee a $60 win on like a $2,000 investment. It's very interesting, eh?
Yeah.
God, I love this stuff. But you're taking a risk, don't forget, because like who could predict that the line shift if you got under at plus money, you gotta know something to predict a line shift against the under. Do you know what I mean? Like that's really bizarre. And I got to say something else. Do you think this under really correlate with the Blue Jackets more or less? The Lightning is more thought of as a prolific scoring team, Stanley Cup champions. Wouldn't you think that this looks to me like strong sharp play on the Jackets and the under? That's just my speculation on this game.
Yeah, we can't make like a full estimation without that money percentage on the puck line.
Yeah.
But most likely a 3-2 win for the Tampa Bay Lightning was probably going to be what's most beneficial for the books, considering
Well,
that.
no. It's going to be a 6-5 win, or sorry, not a 6-5. A 4-3
Oh yeah,
win.
sorry. The money is on the under, so you are right.
Yeah.
A six goal or more game would be more beneficial. So it's interesting to note there. And without the money percentages for the Lightning, Blue Jackets, we don't know if they need the Lightning to win by 1 or 2 or more, which I'm not certain, but I'm hopeful that the money percentages are available to us before puck drop. On to the next game. Fat Guy, only 491 bets in this game so far. 9:30 p.m. Eastern time start for the Montreal Canadiens in Vancouver, taking on the Canucks. The Canadiens opened at -123 on the road. They've been bet up to -131. 62% of bettors and 97% of the money has helped push that line in favor of the Canadiens. It's also interesting to note on the puck line, the Canadiens to win by 2 or more, +182 has been bet down to +178. 94% of bettors have bet the Canadiens to win by 2 goals or more on the road. So we don't have the money percentages, but if we had to make a little bit of an assumption,
This one's easier to do than the last one.
Yeah, it looks like there is quite a bit of exposure on the Canadiens, and the books have even moved the line a little bit in favor of the Canadiens, so they're probably not happy with this much exposure. So like Fat Guy said, when is there going to be buyback, or is there going to be buyback on the Canucks?
Very good question. The one thing is this is a lower volume, 491, but I feel like the handle isn't going to be huge, more than likely. Again, we don't know, right? But there is limits though, right? Because you know what I mean? Like there's limits to these sizing. So like it is possible that like a 491 volume is going to bet more than a 700 volume, for instance. But there are limits to those big bettors. Because you got to remember, like, okay, think of a big unit play for a square is going to be like maybe $100 or $200. And even if you get a whole bunch of those, think of like polling, like an election. They're not going to corroborate too often all at the same time, right? So like usually you would need a bunch of sharps to agree to make this type of disparity. And maybe they do on the Canadiens, or maybe this handle is just low and like the exposure is there, but it's not maximum. You know what I mean? Like it doesn't cross a lot of threshold, right? Because it's only 491 because there's only so much money that can be bet considering betting limits, right? So if there was no limit, obviously we couldn't really even speculate on handle at all. We could just make general assumptions. But considering there are limits, 491 at volume is going to be a lot less, more than likely, than pretty much every other game that we'd mentioned previous to this. So yeah, it does make sense that there is line movements against the Canadiens because they have all the money on them. So it's interesting to know when is, like Big Rice said, when or is there going to be buyback on the Canucks?
And then the OU for this game opened at 6.5. The juice has moved in favor of the over from +105 to +103, despite 78% of bettors and 70% of the money being placed on the under.
Yeah, and this is the other thing too. Like, it's just a weird day. Like 6.5. Like this market makes sense to me. You know what I mean? Like, but the 5.5 and a 5, it's astounding to me. It's just so interesting, But maybe because this game went with overtime, it was 5-5, and it went to 6-5 considering the shootout. So I guess that counts. So that's 11 goals last night. So I'm thinking this is a trap maneuver to try and get squares to bet the over, and perhaps they will balance it out closer to puck drop. So I would like to make a specialty mark on this one as well to see how the money balances out, because like this is the other thing. I've been very philosophical the last few videos, but I mean that's That's part of what we do, right? So we're positing theories, and we're trying to use our our experiences to shape those hypotheses. And one of those things is Joes overreact to results, right? It's results based. It's very strong. You can call it recency bias as well. And so their most recent pull in their catalog of memory, which always is going to be hyperbolic, is going to be, wow, the Canucks had a big scoring game the game before. Yeah, they're probably like, oh, all they have to do is score 7. They scored 11 yesterday with the Canucks and the Canadiens. Why can't it be? Well, because on average, if you were to simulate that game, what part on the bell curve would it be where they score 11 goals? How far would it deviate from the median? And I would imagine a lot. 11 goals is a lot for a game. So what does that mean? Is that this median, the median amount of goals is probably 6 would be my guess between the two teams, roughly with juice, of course. So maybe the median of the game, the price is moved in one deviation away, perhaps suggesting value on the under. This is just a theory on a general gambling theory. It doesn't have to be, on the Canucks Canadiens OU on this market specifically. I'm not suggesting that there is value on the under, but I'm suggesting that those types of biases create opportunity in these types of markets. So again, it's something you would have to track and ascertain. It's come with a hypothesis, and mine would be recency bias or overreaction to results. And like I said, 11. And this is just a good example of that, right? Because we don't get to bring it up that often. So 11 goals yesterday. Wow, they should easily hit over 6.5. And then what? The game's going to be like 2-1. You see it all the time. Just not this game in general, but just gambling theory in general. Sorry, big rant.
On to the Colorado Avalanche LA Kings game, 453 bets, 10 p.m. Eastern time start. The Kings open at plus 218, large dogs at home. They've been bet down to plus 210. 49% of bettors are on the Kings. However, 81% of the money is on the Colorado Avalanche. So a little bit of exposure there on the Avalanche, but we do have a reverse line movement on the Kings, at least on the money line. So let's take a look at the puck line to see if it tells us a different story. The Kings open plus 1.5 at home, minus 119, bet up to minus 130, 59% of bets, 63% of the money. So a little bit of exposure on the Kings plus 1.5. A lot of exposure. Well, not that much because Avalanche are quite big favorites on the road. So, ideally for the books, we would get the Kings to win outright by
that would be best.
6 or more goals.
Yeah. Okay. Here you go. Well, we didn't jump in the OU market.
I might as well just touch on the OU market now that I've teased that.
Yes,
so the over open at 5.5, minus 121. The juice was bet down to minus 114. 80% of bettors are on the over. 87% of the money though is on the under at 5.5.
Yeah, that is interesting. These OUs are starting it interesting. Maybe it got to the tipping point because a lot of overs were happening, and then perhaps they're just outrunning expectation, which happens naturally in probability theory. And then what happens is they line shift, but usually they line shift too much up, and maybe they just know that this game really is. Do you know what I mean? Like the sharp guys know this game's really a 3-1 game either way, most likely.
Yeah.
I don't know. It's just very interesting because you can open this at 6.5, right? And you're still going to get money on the over. But I guess the sharp guys are really more of a nemesis in these types of smaller markets because look at the volume, just 453. Whereas in an NFL game, there's like even the opening hour, there's 453, right? So like those guys are you're battling less of those demons, less of those sharps. But here I feel like maybe you have to set lines to battle them. Specifically, right? Because who knows, like maybe the sharp market in the NHL, considering it's a more of a niche market. I understand it's one of the big sports, but it's not generally watched as much nearly as the American public. So those types of factors would favor the sharps because I can't think of another reason for having such low OUs and then having such discrepancy on the under. So that's just one positive because the under is just never really a square bet. Do you know what I mean? Whereas the Avalanche betting them on a parlay to win outright or the Avalanche just to win is a very square bet. So the OUs have been the most interesting to me for the day.
Yeah, the OUs outside of the Canadiens Canucks market, you can see here that the discrepancy for every single one of these is is completely the opposite. Like usually the side the bet percentage is higher on has the lower percentage of money. So this here signifies that sharp bettors are on the over for this game. This signifies that sharp bettors are on the under for this game. This signifies sharp bettors are on the over. So what Fat Guy is saying is, in some markets it's good to go against it. In some markets it is actually good to follow. So the theory is that with less bets than other markets, sharp bettors might have a stronger indication on what is happening.
The market factors are stronger the more bets there are, because the book has a full complement of how the market is going to. They have a big enough sample, more or less, right? Whereas in these much smaller ones, it's like the reverse kind of. But don't forget, it's not black and white. It's not like, okay, the second it goes over 560 bets, then the market factors are favoring the books. Do you know what I mean? It's a gradient, as anything. It shades out, and it's just really difficult. I know I'm speaking a lot of math and hyperbolic and animated as well, but it is very difficult to do. But it is possible to figure all of these numbers out. I mean, hell, we do this every day, and we're still turning stones over, peeling onions, as I like to say, because this is a lot of math and it's a lot of work. Because don't forget, like, what we're doing, they don't just hand out free money. You know, don't be the guy that just not talks about his wins. Be the guy that talks about his wins and his losses. But even further, be the guy that talks about his decisions. A guy that makes good decisions is always going to be the guy that profits the most over the long term, not the guy that thinks in terms of winning and losing.
That's it, guys, for the NHL betting market for January the 21st. Good luck with your wagers.